What happens when a Hollywood legend walks onto a daytime talk show and the conversation takes a turn no one in the room was expecting? Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The camera opens on the familiar set of The View, the audience clapping as the hosts settle into their seats. Whoopi Goldberg sits at the center, calm and composed as always, glancing toward her co-hosts with a slight smile. "All right," Whoopi says, lifting her cue card slightly. "Our next guest, you know him, you love him, he's been part of some of the biggest films in history." The audience already starts reacting before she even says the name. He's back with a brand new project, and we're happy to have him here today. Please welcome Harrison Ford. The crowd erupts. Some people stand. Applause fills the room as Harrison Ford walks out, giving a modest wave, his expression relaxed but reserved. He shakes hands with the hosts, nodding politely to Whoopi before taking his seat. "Good to see you," Whoopi says. "Good to be here," Harrison replies, his tone calm, almost understated. There's a brief moment where the applause dies down, and you can feel the shift into conversation mode. "So," Whoopi begins, leaning slightly forward, "you've done it all. I mean action, drama, iconic roles. Do you ever get tired of people asking you about the past?" Harrison smiles faintly. "No, not really. It's part of the deal. People care about the work, and that's a good thing." Joy Behar leans in with a grin. "Yeah, but do they ask you the same questions over and over? Because I'd lose my mind." The audience laughs lightly. Harrison shrugs. "Sometimes. But I've learned to answer them differently, or not answer them at all." That gets a small chuckle from the table. Whoopi nods, watching him closely. "That sounds like you're dodging us already." Harrison raises an eyebrow. "Not yet." There's a ripple of laughter, but there's also a subtle tension, the kind that doesn't fully register yet, but sits just beneath the surface. Sunny Hostin jumps in. "Let's talk about the new project. What drew you to it at this stage in your career?" Harrison shifts slightly in his chair. "The story. It's always about the story. If it feels honest, if it feels like something worth telling, then I'm interested." "Honest," Whoopi repeats, almost emphasizing the word. "That's interesting, because a lot of people lately have been talking about honesty in Hollywood, and whether actors speak up enough about real-world issues." The audience gives a small, intrigued murmur. Harrison looks at her, his expression tightening just slightly. "That's a broad question." "It is," Whoopi says. "But you've been around long enough to see how things have changed. Do you think actors have a responsibility to speak out more now than before?" There's a pause. You can feel it in the room, that shift from casual promotion to something a bit more pointed. Harrison leans back slightly. "I think actors have a responsibility to do their job well. Beyond that, it's up to the individual." Some audience members nod. Others stay quiet. Whoopi tilts her head. "So you don't think there's any obligation?" "I didn't say that," Harrison replies, calmly but firmly. "I said it's a personal choice." Joy jumps in, sensing the tension. "But come on, you have a platform. Millions of people listen to what you say." Harrison turns slightly toward her. "And that doesn't mean I should use it the same way someone else does." The audience reacts, a mix of applause and a few murmurs. Whoopi leans in a bit more now. "But don't you think silence can also send a message?" There it is. The question lands heavier than the others. Harrison doesn't answer immediately. He looks at Whoopi for a second longer than before, then folds his hands together. "Sometimes," he says slowly, "people assume silence means agreement. Or disagreement. But sometimes it just means you're thinking." The audience quiets down. Whoopi nods, but there's a slight edge in her tone now. "That's fair. But in times where people are looking for leadership, from figures they respect, doesn't that thinking need to turn into action?" Harrison exhales lightly, not frustrated, but clearly choosing his words carefully. "I think leadership comes in many forms," he says. "And not all of them involve speaking loudly on television." There's a noticeable reaction from the audience, a mix of claps and a few oohs. Sunny glances at Whoopi, sensing where this might be going. Whoopi doesn't back off. "But this is television," she says, gesturing around. "And people are watching. So when you're here, isn't that part of the responsibility?" Harrison's expression hardens just a fraction. "I'm here to talk about my work," he replies. "That's why I was invited, right?" There's a brief, awkward pause. Joy raises her eyebrows. "Well, yes, but we also talk about bigger issues here. That's kind of what we do." Harrison nods. "And that's fine. But I don't think every conversation has to turn into that." The audience reacts again, louder this time. Some clapping, some murmuring. Whoopi leans back slightly, crossing her arms for a moment before uncrossing them again. So you'd rather keep it separate? I'd rather keep it honest, Harrison says. And for me, that means not pretending I have all the answers. There's a shift now, the kind where the room feels divided. Some audience members applaud that statement strongly. Others stay quiet. Sonny tries to ease things slightly. I think what he's saying is that authenticity matters more than expectation. Harrison nods. Exactly. But Whoopi isn't fully convinced. Authenticity is important, she says. But so is accountability. That word hangs in the air. Harrison looks at her again, this time more directly. And who decides what that looks like? He asks. The audience reacts immediately, louder now. Whoopi doesn't hesitate. We all do. That's the point of conversations like this. Harrison gives a small, tight smile. Then we're having one. There's a mix of laughter and tension, a strange combination that fills the room. Joy leans in, trying to lighten it. Well, this is definitely more interesting than the usual promo tour. The audience laughs, breaking the tension just a little. But Whoopi isn't done. She looks at Harrison again, her tone calmer but still firm. I just think, when people look up to you, whether you want them to or not, there's a weight that comes with that. Harrison nods slowly. And I carry it in my own way. There's a pause. A real one this time. The kind where no one jumps in immediately. The audience is quiet, watching closely. And you can feel it. This isn't just a promotional interview anymore. Something real is starting to unfold. And it's only just getting started. The brief silence lingers just a little too long for daytime television. And you can feel the energy in the room shift from polite curiosity into something more focused, more alert. Whoopi leans forward again, her tone measured but firmer now. But do you think your way is always enough? Harrison doesn't answer immediately. He glances out toward the audience for a second, then back at the table. I don't think there's a universal enough, he says. That's kind of the problem with the question. Sonny nods slightly, trying to bridge the gap. I think what Whoopi's getting at is, there are moments in history where people expect more visibility from public figures. Harrison turns to her. And I understand that. But expectation doesn't always equal obligation. Joy exhales softly, shaking her head with a half smile. You're very good at this, you know that? You're answering without really giving them what they want. The audience laughs lightly. Harrison gives a small shrug. Or maybe I'm just answering honestly. Whoopi doesn't smile this time. She watches him carefully. Honesty is good. But sometimes honesty can also be avoiding something. That lands a little heavier. A few people in the audience murmur. You can hear a faint from somewhere in the crowd. Harrison's expression tightens just a bit more than before. Avoiding what exactly? Whoopi doesn't hesitate. Taking a stand. There it is again, clearer this time, more direct. Harrison leans forward slightly now, mirroring her posture. And who says I haven't? The audience reacts instantly, a louder mix of claps and surprised murmurs. Sonny looks between them. Okay, I think we're getting into something deeper here. Joy nods. Yeah, this is no longer about the movie. There's a ripple of laughter, but it doesn't fully break the tension. Whoopi keeps her focus on Harrison. Well, have you? Publicly? Harrison pauses again, but this time it feels different, less reflective, more deliberate. I've made my views known in ways that matter to me, he says. But not here, Whoopi replies. And that's intentional, Harrison says, his voice still calm but more grounded. The audience reacts again, a mix of approval and curiosity. Sonny leans in. Can I ask why? Because I think that's what people are trying to understand. Harrison nods slightly. Because not every platform is the right place for every conversation. Whoopi raises an eyebrow. You don't think this is the right place? I think this is your space, Harrison says. And I respect that. But I don't think it has to become mine in the same way. That draws a louder reaction, a few claps, but also a noticeable wave of murmurs. Joy looks impressed but cautious. That's a very careful answer. Harrison glances at her. It's a truthful one. Whoopi sits back for a moment, taking that in. She folds her hands, then unfolds them again, clearly choosing her next words. But when you come onto a show like The View, she says, you're stepping into conversations that go beyond entertainment. That's part of what we do here. Harrison nods. And I respect that. But you don't want to participate in that part of it, Whoopi presses. I didn't say that, Harrison replies. I said I choose how I participate. There's a subtle but noticeable ooh from the audience. Sonny glances toward Whoopi, sensing the back and forth is getting sharper. I think there's a middle ground here, Sunny says. Because audiences today are different. They don't just want to see the work. They want to understand the person behind it. Harrison looks at her thoughtfully. And I think that's fair. But I also think people should be careful about how much they expect to know. Joy nods slowly. That's actually a good point. There's a line between public and private. Whoopi shakes her head slightly. But we're not asking about private life. We're talking about public issues. Harrison responds quickly this time. And I engage with those, just not always in front of cameras. The audience reacts again, a mix of applause and quiet skepticism. Whoopi leans forward again, her voice a little more pointed now. But the cameras are where the impact is. Harrison meets her gaze directly. Not always. That answer draws a louder reaction. Some applause, some surprised laughter. Joy raises her hands slightly. Okay, now we're really debating. Sunny smiles nervously. Yeah, this is getting intense. The audience laughs, but it's more of a release than amusement. Whoopi doesn't break eye contact. So where is the impact then? Harrison's voice remains steady. In actions. In decisions. In what you actually do, not just what you say. There's a brief pause. Then a wave of applause from part of the audience. But not everyone is clapping. Whoopi nods slowly. Words matter too. They do, Harrison agrees. But they're not everything. Joy leans in again. But for a lot of people, words are the only thing they see from you. Harrison turns to her. Then maybe we need to rethink that. That gets a stronger reaction, more applause this time, but still mixed. Sunny looks at Whoopi again. I think what he's saying is that there's more happening behind the scenes than we realize. Whoopi exhales softly. Maybe, but people don't see behind the scenes. Harrison responds calmly. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. There's another pause. A real one. The kind where everyone's weighing what's been said. The audience is quieter now, more attentive. Joy breaks it slightly. This is definitely not the usual morning conversation. A few laughs ripple through the room. But Whoopi's tone shifts again, softer, but more personal. I just think, when you've been in the spotlight as long as you have, she says, people look to you for more than just performances. Harrison nods slowly. And I understand that. Do you? Whoopi asks, not aggressively, but with genuine curiosity now. Harrison pauses. I do, he says. But I also think it's important not to confuse visibility with responsibility in a way that becomes performative. That word hits. The audience reacts instantly, louder this time. Sunny's eyebrows lift. That's a strong word. Joy nods. Yeah, that's loaded. Whoopi tilts her head slightly. Performative. Harrison doesn't back down. Yes, there's a noticeable shift now. This is no longer just a discussion. It's a debate. Whoopi leans forward again. So you think people speaking out publicly is performative? I think it can be, Harrison says. Not always, but sometimes. The audience murmurs more loudly now. You can hear different reactions overlapping. Sunny jumps in quickly. I think we need to be careful there, because for a lot of people, speaking out is the only tool they have. Harrison nods. And I respect that. But, Whoopi asks. Harrison looks at her again. But I don't think it should be the only measure of whether someone cares. There's a strong wave of applause from part of the audience. But again, not everyone joins in. Whoopi sits back, crossing her arms briefly before relaxing again. Okay, she says slowly. So then how do we measure it? Harrison doesn't answer right away. He takes a breath, looks out at the audience, then back at the table. And for the first time, there's a hint of something deeper in his expression. Not frustration, not anger, but something closer to conviction. That's exactly the problem, he says. We're trying to measure something that isn't meant to be measured. The room goes quiet again. Not awkward. Focused. Even Joy doesn't jump in this time. Whoopi watches him closely, as if deciding whether to push further or shift direction. And for a brief moment, it feels like the conversation might ease. But then she leans forward again, her voice steady. Or maybe, she says, we're just asking people to show it. And just like that, the tension rises again, stronger than before. The audience reacts immediately. Some clapping, some murmuring, everyone watching. Because now it's clear. This conversation isn't slowing down. It's building. The reaction from the audience hasn't even fully settled when Whoopi Goldberg leans in again, her expression calm, but unmistakably firm. Or maybe, she repeats, we're just asking people to show it. You can feel the weight of that sentence sit across the table. Harrison Ford doesn't immediately respond this time. He looks at her, then briefly down at the table, as if considering whether to push back again or let it pass. But he doesn't let it pass. I think people show it in different ways, he says, his tone still controlled but more deliberate now. And not all of those ways are visible to an audience. Whoopi nods slightly, but she doesn't soften. But visibility is what creates influence. Harrison answers quickly. Visibility also creates pressure to perform. That word lands again, perform. The audience reacts louder this time. A mix of claps, a few surprised laughs, and some low murmurs ripple through the room. Joy Behar leans back slightly, her eyebrows raised. Okay, now we're getting into something real. Sunny Hostin glances at both of them, clearly aware the conversation has crossed into a more serious space. I think we're talking about intention versus perception. Harrison nods toward her. Exactly, but Whoopi shakes her head lightly. No, we're talking about responsibility. There's a subtle but noticeable shift again, the tone tightening. Harrison leans forward now, his posture more engaged than at any point before. Responsibility to who? The audience reacts immediately, louder this time. Whoopi answers without hesitation. To the people who support you, who watch you, who listen to you. Harrison holds her gaze. And what if I don't want to reduce that relationship to statements on a show like The View? There's an audible "oh" from parts of the audience. Joy looks between them. Okay, that was direct. Sunny shifts slightly in her seat. We're definitely in it now. Whoopi's expression doesn't change much, but her tone sharpens just a fraction. It's not about reducing anything. It's about using the platform. Harrison responds just as quickly. And I do, just not always in ways that are broadcast. The audience reacts again, some applause, some hesitation. Whoopi leans forward again, her voice steady. But if it's not visible, how does it help the people who need to see it? Harrison pauses, but only briefly. Because not everything is about being seen. That line hits harder than the others. There's a stronger reaction now, a mix of applause and a few scattered murmurs of disagreement. Joy exhales, almost laughing at the intensity. This is not your usual promo segment, I'll tell you that. A few audience members laugh, but the tension doesn't fully break. Sunny tries again to mediate. I think what's happening here is two different ideas of impact. One is public and vocal, the other is quieter and more behind the scenes. Harrison nods. Yes. Whoopi looks at Sunny, then back at Harrison. But the quieter version doesn't always reach people. Harrison answers calmly. It reaches the people it needs to. The audience reacts again, more divided now. Some clap firmly. Others stay silent. A few shake their heads. Whoopi sits back slightly, taking a breath before leaning in again. But how do you know that? Harrison's expression shifts, just slightly, more serious now. Because I'm involved. There's a pause. That answer lands differently. Sunny tilts her head. Can you expand on that? Harrison hesitates for a second, then shakes his head lightly. Not in detail. Joy lets out a small laugh. Of course not. The audience chuckles, but again it's brief. Whoopi's tone changes again, less sharp, more probing. So we're supposed to trust that it's happening. Harrison meets her gaze. Yes. That simplicity creates another wave of reaction. Louder murmurs, a few claps, a few skeptical sounds. Whoopi nods slowly. That's hard for people. Harrison replies, I understand that. Do you? Whoopi asks again, this time more quietly. There's a moment, a real one. Harrison doesn't answer immediately. He looks at her, and for a second, the tension feels less like a clash and more like a genuine difference in perspective. I do, he says finally. But I also think it's dangerous to assume that what you don't see isn't real. The audience quiets down again. Sunny nods slowly. That's fair. Joy adds. But in today's world, people are used to seeing everything. Harrison responds. And maybe that's part of the problem. That line draws a louder reaction, more applause this time, but still mixed. Whoopi exhales softly, leaning back for a moment. So you think the expectation itself is flawed? Harrison nods. I think it can be. Whoopi leans forward again, her tone steady but unmistakably firm. Or maybe the expectation exists because people have been let down before. That hits. The audience reacts with a more emotional murmur, less sharp, more thoughtful. Harrison doesn't interrupt this time. He listens. Whoopi continues. People look to public figures because sometimes those are the only voices that get heard. So when those voices stay quiet, it feels like something's missing. There's a pause. A longer one. Even Joy doesn't jump in. Sunny looks at Harrison, waiting. And for the first time, Harrison doesn't immediately counter. He takes a breath. I hear that, he says. It's a small shift, but noticeable. The audience picks up on it, a few soft claps. Whoopi nods slightly. Okay, but, Harrison adds, and you can feel the tension rise again just a little. I don't think the solution is to expect everyone to respond the same way. Joy leans in. So what's the solution then? Harrison looks at her, then back at the table. To allow for different approaches without assuming one is better than the other. Sunny nods. That sounds reasonable. Whoopi considers it, but doesn't fully concede. As long as those approaches actually lead to something. Harrison responds, they do. Even if we don't see it, Whoopi says. Even if you don't see it, Harrison replies. The audience reacts again, a mix of applause and tension. Joy raises her hand slightly. Okay, I feel like we're going in circles now. A few laughs break out. Sunny smiles faintly. But it's an important circle. Whoopi finally leans back a bit more, her posture relaxing just slightly. I don't disagree with everything you're saying. Harrison nods. And I don't disagree with everything you're saying. There's a small ripple of laughter, the first moment that feels like a genuine release. But the underlying tension hasn't disappeared. It's just settled. For now. Joy looks at both of them. See. Progress. The audience claps lightly. Sunny glances at the camera, then back at the table. This is definitely one of those conversations people are going to be talking about. Whoopi gives a small smile, but it's measured. Oh, they will. Harrison exhales softly, leaning back in his chair for the first time in a while. But even in that moment of slight ease, you can feel it. Nothing about this conversation has been simple. And as the segment edges closer to wrapping up, there's still an unspoken sense that what just happened isn't going to stay on this stage. There's a noticeable shift as the conversation begins to wind down, but the energy in the room hasn't fully settled. It's not tense in the same sharp way anymore. It's heavier, more reflective. The kind of atmosphere that lingers after something real has been said. Joy Behar exhales and leans back slightly, glancing between Whoopi Goldberg and Harrison Ford. Well, I think it's safe to say this was not your typical interview. The audience laughs, but it's softer now, less about humor, more about release. Sunny Hostin nods. No, but I think it's one people are going to remember. Whoopi turns slightly toward Harrison, her tone calmer than before, but still grounded. Look, I don't think anyone here doubts that you care. I just think people want to feel that connection more clearly. Harrison nods slowly. And I respect that. I do. There's no edge in his voice now, just a steady sincerity. But I also think, he continues, that connection doesn't always have to happen in the same way for everyone. The audience listens quietly. Whoopi studies him for a second, then gives a small nod. Fair enough. That simple exchange seems to ease something in the room. Joy claps her hands lightly. All right, we found some middle ground. That's good. That's very good. A few audience members clap along, the mood lifting just a bit. Sunny smiles. I think this is what conversation is supposed to look like, even when it gets uncomfortable. Whoopi agrees with a slight tilt of her head. Yeah, uncomfortable doesn't mean unproductive. Harrison gives a faint smile at that. There's a brief pause, and then Whoopi shifts the tone slightly, bringing it back toward the show format. Before we let you go, let's at least give you a moment to talk about the project you came here for. The audience laughs, louder this time. Harrison chuckles softly. I appreciate that. He briefly mentions the project, a few sentences, nothing too long. And the hosts nod along, but it's clear the room is still holding on to what just happened. As the segment wraps, Whoopi turns toward the camera. Well, she says, that's why we do this show. Conversations that matter, even when they're not easy. The audience applauds, more unified now. Harrison stands, shaking hands with the hosts again. There's a moment where he and Whoopi exchange a look, not tense, not overly warm, but respectful. Thank you, Whoopi says. Thank you, Harrison replies. As he walks off stage, the applause continues, but there's a different tone to it. Thoughtful, not just celebratory. The camera cuts back to the table. Joy immediately leans forward. Okay, we're going to be hearing about that one all day. Sunny nods. Social media is probably already reacting. Whoopi glances toward one of the off-camera monitors. Oh, I'm sure it is. There's a slight pause as a producer's voice can faintly be heard off stage, cueing them. Sunny smiles. You know what, though? I think it's important that people see conversations like that. It's not about agreeing. It's about understanding where someone is coming from. Joy adds, yeah, but people are definitely going to pick sides. The audience laughs again. Whoopi leans back slightly. That's what people do. The show transitions to the next segment, but the energy never fully resets. Later that day, clips from The View begin circulating online. Short segments of the exchange between Whoopi and Harrison start appearing across platforms. One clip highlights the moment Harrison says, "Not everything is about being seen." Another focuses on Whoopi's response about responsibility and visibility. Within hours, the reactions start pouring in. Some viewers praise Harrison Ford for staying composed and sticking to his perspective. Others side with Whoopi Goldberg, agreeing that public figures should be more vocal. The debate spreads quickly. Clips get reposted, commented on, dissected. People slow down the conversation, analyze tone, body language, choice of words. On social media, the discussion splits into two clear sides, but also a third group that appreciates the conversation itself. Comments start appearing like, "Finally, a real discussion instead of scripted answers." This is what talk shows used to be. They didn't agree, but they actually listened. Behind the scenes, producers at The View are already reviewing the segment. There's talk about how authentic it felt, how it wasn't planned, how neither side backed down, but neither crossed a line. One producer reportedly says, "That's the kind of moment you can't script." Backstage, after the show, the atmosphere is quieter. Harrison Ford is seen speaking briefly with a few crew members, thanking them before preparing to leave. Whoopi Goldberg remains at the table for a moment longer than usual, talking with producers and co-hosts. There's no sign of any argument continuing off camera. If anything, the tone is professional, respectful. Sunny later mentions, in a brief off-air conversation, "That was intense, but it was real." Joy agrees. And honestly, we need more of that. Whoopi doesn't say much at first. Then she simply adds, "Yeah, we do." By the evening, entertainment outlets begin picking up the story. Headlines describe it as a heated exchange, but also as a rare moment of genuine dialogue on daytime TV. Clips continue gaining traction. Some viewers rewatch the segment multiple times, catching details they missed the first time. The pause before certain answers. The shift in tone. The way the audience reacted in waves. It becomes more than just a segment. It becomes a conversation people feel part of. Back on the show the next day, the hosts briefly acknowledge the reaction. Whoopi addresses it directly. "Yesterday's conversation got a lot of attention," she says. "And that's okay. That's what happens when people care." Sunny adds, "And we appreciate everyone engaging with it respectfully." Joy smiles. Well, mostly respectfully. The audience laughs. Whoopi finishes with a calm tone. At the end of the day, it's about having the conversation. And that's where it leaves off. A moment that started as a simple interview turned into something bigger. Not an argument, not a resolution, but a real exchange of perspectives that didn't fully align, and didn't need to. And now it's your turn. What do you think? Was Harrison Ford right to approach things his way? Or do you agree more with Whoopi Goldberg? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories.